Good evening, this is Goldie, also known as Mr. Anecdotal, Mr. Pasty, and the Talking Head. It's Wednesday, March 28th, 2012. Remember, most importantly, I rant so you don't have to. If you want a transcript of this show, send me an email to goldyrant@gmail.com, but, I go off script quite a bit, so some of it's not written down. All right. Since the supremely stupid court is deliberating on Obamacare, I want to bring up a couple of points. Number one, Obama should have called the mandate a tax, just like I said. Number two, let me give the example that proves the rule. Guy gets his leg cut off in an emergency room driveway at a private hospital. And number three, Dick Cheney's new heart. Let me go through each point. Point one, Obama should have called it a tax. From the Wall Street Journal, March 27th, 2012. Quotes, "If it looks like a tax and acts like a tax," by Jess Braven. Quotes, "If the Obama health care law ultimately is struck down by the Supreme Court, the reason could be the absence of a single word, tax. The High Court long has recognized broad congressional authority to levy taxes, and both supporters and opponents say the law would be on firmer ground if the penalty for those who refuse to carry health insurance were labeled a tax. In fact, the House version of the bill did just that, explicitly establishing a tax on individuals without acceptable health care coverage. But many supporters feared that already shaky support for the initiative would crumble if opponents could characterize it as enacting a tax increase. If you remember, that was March of 2010. This is exactly what I said about the bill and the danger of its unconstitutionality when opponents started talking about the mandate and the nature of a government making you buy a product. It is a problem. I don't know if it's going to make it, by the way. Not with those doofuses that are there now. Let me give the example that proves the rule. This is point number two. And I always use this example to show what type of country we are. It's in contrast to that Republican debate when Ron Paul got applause for letting a guy die. A guy gets his leg cut off in the emergency room driveway at a private hospital. The question you ask yourself, and we all need to ask ourselves, is, there's blood spewing out of his leg. What do you want the doctors in that emergency room to do? With or without insurance, doesn't matter. We want them to stop the bleeding and save the guy's life. That's just the nature of what we are as human beings. Now, there's probably a few of you out there that say, if he doesn't have insurance, he should die. That's not relevant. First, need to start by seeing the number of people who want to treat this person and make sure that they don't die. We know what the answer is. You're certainly not going to be at a cocktail party or at a family gathering and say, let the guy bleed to death in the next 2 minutes. Okay? Ask that question to anybody. And then stare at them if they say, let the guy die. None of them will say that, because we don't need to ask the question as to whether or not he has insurance. We're just asking whether or not you should help somebody who's had his leg cut off. He's right there at the emergency room door of Seton Hospital. Do you want him treated? Answer is yes, we do. That's different than somebody who goes walking into Office Depot and needs a new laser printer cartridge. He doesn't have the money. What do we want Office Depot to do? Well, pretty much we'd say, don't sell him the printer cartridge. Why? Because it's not life or death. That proves that healthcare is not like a laser printer cartridge. So you can't say the free market will provide. It never has. It certainly will not. And here's a better question. And I say this in all seriousness because I just saw something on Facebook against the government mandate and unconstitutionality, blah, blah, blah. Since this is a Christian country, founded on Christian principles, at least a lot of Christians say that, what would Jesus do? And I mean, what would he do? What would he ask that hospital to do? Generally, these evangelicals are in the Republican Party, and they're the ones opposed to treating this person. It's very inconsistent How do you hold those inconsistent positions? I believe in Christ and giving and saving lives, but just not these people's lives. And people won't even admit that. Point number 3. Dick Cheney's new heart. All joking aside, whether or not he used his government health care plan, one thing is for sure. If he had wanted a new heart under Obamacare, he could have paid cash for it, completely undermining the arguments of the wealthy that they will lose coverage under Obamacare, or they'll lose some health care. I've already said before, the wealthy have nothing to fear from Obamacare. The wealthy that own companies have something to fear from Obamacare. The wealthy that actually pay taxes have something to fear from Obamacare, because there are going to be 30 million more people getting health care. That's the point. We have decided as a nation, as a people, as humans, that we care about others. That's what we've decided. So I use the law school example of the cut off leg in the emergency room door. And I want to hear from anybody that wants to say, let the guy die. Because the only question that matters is, do you want him treated? Now, if we go back to the old system of whether or not you have insurance, there are going to be people that say, he doesn't have insurance, let him die. Most people are going to say, treat him. Then I have to ask, how do we pay for the treatment? Because he chose not to carry insurance. He is going to get treated. If he fell down on the street, they call 911. He will go to the hospital. He will go to a public hospital. But what about if he's outside of that private hospital? How does it get paid for? It's a service that we have decided that we want all people to have. Some life-saving care. Some health care. I'm not saying lung transplants or kidney transplants for everyone. Liver transplants for everyone. Number one, you can't even get that now under your current health care plan. It's already being rationed. So be careful in these inconsistent statements that you are making when you're against it. Yes, the cost will be higher. It'll eventually get lower, although everybody's premiums have gone up. The Supreme Court says Obamacare is unconstitutional. Do you think your premiums are going to go back down? I know mine aren't. Mine have gone up $500 a month in the last 5 years. All right. As a follow-up to my February 19th, 2012 rant regarding Obama's indefinite detentions and extrajudicial lynchings of American citizens, quotes, U.S. Yemen Restart Training by Margaret Coker, Hakeem Al-Mazmari, and Julian E. Barnes in the Wall Street Journal, March 7, 2012. Quotes, U.S. and Yemeni officials have agreed to restart a controversial military training program to help the Middle East nation's new president tackle emboldened al-Qaeda militants. Dozens of U.S. Special Operations forces already on the ground are set to resume training of counterterrorism forces after a lull last year, amid a wave of sophisticated assaults by the Yemeni branch of the terrorist group and loosely linked jihadi groups. Washington considers al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, the Yemeni affiliate, one of the greatest threats to the U.S. homeland. A U.S. official said AQAP retains the ambitions and capability to attack the West and to gain ground locally. Unlike in other Mideast countries, the U.S. and the international community brokered the power transfer agreement that gave him, former President Saleh, immunity from acts committed during his 33 years in power and anointed a transitional coalition government populated with the nation's political elite. The diplomatic effort was largely because of worries AQAP could solidify its foothold in the country should political chaos continue. By the way, you can say that about every country in the world. U.S. and British military trainers worked in the country under former President Saleh, but stopped much of their mission this past May amid the government crackdown of the national anti-regime protests demanding Mr. Saleh leave power. Some counterterrorism programs continued amid the Yemeni government's instability in 2011. The CIA inaugurated its new drone program in Yemen with the late September strike on a top operative of al-Qaeda in Yemen American citizen Anwar al-Awlaki. And the agency has continued to press ahead with that program, which includes surveillance and counterterrorism intelligence collection in addition to lethal strikes. What it doesn't say is, and torture. As an additional follow-up to my February 19, 2012 rant regarding Obama's indefinite detentions and extrajudicial lynchings of American citizens. God, I can't say it. Holder defends anti-terror policies from the Wall Street Journal, March 5, 2012. Quotes, "It is constitutional for the U.S. government to kill a U.S. citizen posing an imminent terrorist threat to the country if capturing that person isn't feasible and the strike is conducted in accordance with the laws of war," Attorney General Eric Holder said Monday. You have to reread this thing to just look at that sentence. If capturing that person isn't feasible and the strike is conducted in accordance with the laws of war, which are made up by us. The speech that Holder gave was one in a series of addresses by Obama administration officials aimed at reassuring allies in Congress and overseas about the legality of the government's counterterrorism operations. They should just call it lynching operations, including an increasing reliance on strikes by drone aircraft, or killings by drone aircraft. Mr. Holder made only glancing reference to Mr. Awlaki, a U.S. citizen who was lynched by the U.S., but stated clearly that when faced, and I put those words in there, that when faced with a citizen terrorist who may be impossible to capture, the government has the clear authority to defend the U.S. from lethal force. The strikes against U.S. citizens, Mr. Holder said, were also consistent with the U.S. Constitution. Critics of the Awlaki killing have said his due process rights under the Fifth Amendment were ignored when the U.S. decided to put him on the target list without a trial or judicial oversight. True. The speech didn't quiet critics on the left, or me. Few things are as dangerous to American liberty as the proposition that the government should be able to kill citizens anywhere in the world on the basis of legal standards and evidence that are never submitted to a court, either before or after the fact, said Hina Shamsi, director of the ACLU's National Security Project. I completely agree. Some administration officials are concerned the country's moral and legal standing could be undermined by what critics say is a failure to provide legal justification for U.S. counterterrorism operations. I promise you, our moral and legal standing is not undermined by this. Our moral and legal standing has been undermined by our imperialist policies over the last 200 years. Which gets us back to those people after 9/11 going, why did they attack us? We are innocent. We're not innocent. I'm not saying we're always guilty, but we are not innocent. We assassinate leaders. We install governments. South America, Central America, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Panama. All right, back to it. Officials are worried that, if not more clearly explained, the U.S. conduct could set a precedent for other countries developing their own drone program. Or just deciding to replace our government with a government they like, or assassinating our leaders, or killing our babies. So Holder is taking up the mantle of the Bush administration that if the executive does it, it's constitutional. All the old usual suspects are laughing gleefully that this Democratic administration has had to look at realities and kill people and babies at will, if they don't like them. The standards are almost that easy to overcome. You Democrats should understand that Obama is worse than more of the same. I just had this discussion last week with some Democrats. They go, he's not worse than more of the same. And I go, did you protest the Libyan war? Have you protested the Pakistani incursions and the drones and the killings of U.S. citizens? Indefinite detentions? No, but when Bush was getting ready to go in Iraq, I walked the Congress Avenue Bridge. It makes me dream of a country where Sarah Palin is the VP and McCain is the president. You know why? There would have been this huge group of Democrats, anti-war, anti-torture, anti-terror, that would have continued protesting. Where are they now? They're gone. They're whiny little brats. They don't even know how to... It's like people opposed to universal health care, even though we already have it. You can't come up with a good argument. Well, Obama's better than Bush. No, he's not. He's worse. He's worse. Worse than more of the same. Okay, notwithstanding that Obama is worse than more of the same, the president does matter. Republicans are responsible for the Supreme Court opinions like Kelo, which was taking of private property for private purposes in Connecticut, and Citizens United, which unleashed this wave of super PACs and eliminated restrictions on campaign financing. So, as painful as it is, you still have to vote for Obama. You have to, because those Supreme Court justices matter. Do you know how hard it is for me to try and get a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United? Nearly impossible. It's easier to put a Democratic president in there and pray that there are some replacements that need to be made during the next administration. All right, slight divergence. Following my February 19th, 2012 rant, I got an email from Scooter. Goldy, I don't understand Obama's failure to be 2008 Obama. So many things that the president should be able to do by executive order he hasn't done. I suspect that who the president is doesn't really matter anymore. Scooter. Because the first day in office he is told that his hands are tied. He has no real choice. They tell him secrets that change his mind about everything. Maybe true, maybe lies. Probably half-truths. True. Supreme Court justices certainly do matter. If there's any hope for this republic, it is in their hands. That's a scary thought given the current makeup. You make a very interesting point that what is changing is that they talk openly about things that used to be done only in secret. Torturing people, admitting it openly, then debating it as if it's just a semantics issue. Assassinating American citizens and admitting it openly, but again, debating semantics on whether it is assassination or war, or rules of war. Obvious violations of the Constitution cast as a debate about the difference between a terrorist and a criminal. Scooter, my response. Yes, that is the painful truth of the slippery slope. Once everyone knows the photo is going up on Facebook and you will be tagged, you cannot complain when it happens. And this occurred over the last 4 years. 10 years ago, people took pictures of you. You never even worried about it. Now, you assume it's going to go up there. It's just another example of the necessity of the constant fight. Because like the New Orleans floods during Katrina, when a crack occurs, it spreads unless immediately repaired. As a follow-up to my February 19th, 2012 rant on the drug war and its causes, there was a headline in the Wall Street Journal, November 23rd, 2011. Merck to pay $950 million. $950 million Vioxx settlement by Peter Loftus and Brent Kendall. Quotes. Merck and Company agreed to pay $950 million and plead guilty to a criminal misdemeanor charge to resolve government allegations that the company illegally promoted its former painkiller Vioxx and deceived the government about its safety. GlaxoSmithKline plc recently reached an agreement in principle to pay $3 billion to settle U.S. allegations of improper drug marketing. Pfizer Inc., Eli Lilly and Company, and AstraZeneca plc also have reached costly settlements in recent years. Merck shares fell 33 cents or 1% to $33.81 at 4 p.m. New York Stock Exchange composite trading Tuesday. As I typed this on February 23rd, 2012, Merck was trading at $38.60. Okay? So they're up $5 from when they had to pay $950 million. Cost of doing business. In the Wall Street Journal, February 23rd, 2012, FDA advisors bless new diet drug. A federal advisory panel overwhelmingly backed the weight loss drug, I guess it's Zeneca with a Q, QNEXA, clearing the way for the Food and Drug Administration to potentially approve a prescription diet drug for the first time in more than a decade. Kinexa, which is made by a small California firm called Vivus Inc., and 2 other weight loss drugs were rejected by the FDA in the past 2 years on concerns about potential safety risks. But on Wednesday, a panel of non-FDA medical experts reviewed additional clinical data that convinced panelists the drug's benefits outweighed any dangers. These dangers include a risk of birth defects and possible effects on the heart. In the center of the article is a box called Diet Woes Weight Loss Drug Setbacks, 1997. American Home Products pulls Redux and Pondimin, components of fen-phen, which you may have heard about or seen commercials on, off the market on concerns that they cause heart valves to leak. 2007, Sanofi Aventis withdraws application to sell Accompli in the U.S. after an FDA panel rejected the drug because it was linked to depression and suicidal thinking. 2010, Abbott Laboratories removes Meridia from the U.S. market amid concerns it is linked to heart attack and stroke. FDA also rejects Kinexa by Vivus and rejects Lorcaserin by Arena Pharmaceuticals. All right. We want these companies to develop these drugs. No doubt. We want to use these drugs. They're life-saving drugs. The free market creates incentives and disincentives. The incentive is for them to most profitably develop these drugs, sell them to us at the highest possible price, keep it off the market for generics for as long as they possibly can, and then come up with a new one that's slightly improved. I like those incentives. Those incentives are all good. People get bonuses based on that profitability. The cost of doing business is shown with how they have no problem paying these settlements. We see how that works. The cost of paying the settlements is far less than not doing the deal. And then, of course, there's the real drug war. The real drug war is Paxil and Oxy, and Vicodin versus weed. That's the real drug war. Now, let's look at who have these incentives. Who has these incentives? So who are the players? The media companies that take ads from lawyers against Vioxx, if you watch Fox. The lawyers who sue Vioxx, they all donate to the politicians that make the laws that allow for these drugs. Also, I completely counter the argument that the system is working by looking at the evidence on Fox. I watch Fox, so you don't have to. Do you know there is one commercial per break for lawsuits against drugs that were advertised 5 years ago? Directly to you. Now on this one, this is a diet drug. People just can't change their diet and exercise. They have to take a pill. I guarantee you, I will bet anybody $100 right now within 8 years of this moment, anybody, take this bet, that this particular drug will be off the market and there will be lawsuits. So, we know incentives and disincentives. Now let's look at the rule system that they operate under. They have super PACs, unlimited super PACs, unlimited funds to lobby, unlimited jobs given to regulators at the FDA, unlimited revolving door, unlimited access to senators, unlimited access. They write the regulations. They hand them to the regulators. That is the structural regulatory defect. So we see that this is just another one of the problems because of that structural regulatory defect, because of Citizens United. That's the problem. We want these drugs. We need these drugs. How do we get them safely? Well, the problem is you have to look at everybody's incentives. So whenever a drug company comes to you and says, we have a new drug, you have to assume that it hurts you. It might work, but it hurts you. They leave it up to us to figure out how it hurts us. In this case, the government is supposed to be protecting us. In this case, the commons, one of the items of the commons is the health of the nation. and the cost. The shareholders all benefit from this. Vioxx, who owns Merck? I think I own it. All right, finally, another of the net effects of this failed drug war shown in an Austin American-Statesman article dated October 17, 2011 by Porfirio Ibarra Ramirez entitled, "Police Let Zetas Hold Victims in Jail." Several police officers in northern Mexico allowed a violent drug gang to hold kidnapped victims in the local jail while ransom payments were being negotiated, an official said Thursday. Legalize drugs and we will save Mexico. Simple. All right. Another structural regulatory defect. There was a short blurb in the Wall Street Journal, February 21st, 2012, written by Tennille Tracy. U.S. approval paves way for drilling in the Arctic. U.S. officials have approved the oil spill plan for Royal Dutch Shell PLC as the company looks to begin drilling in the Arctic, saying Shell has demonstrated its ability to respond to potential spills in icy waters, despite protests from environmental groups. You may remember that the origins of the structural regulatory defect, as I call it, and its relationship to Citizens United started during the BP oil gusher in the Gulf of Mexico. It's the same thing. I was hoping that that oil gusher would continue forever. Because if you remember, when you watched Fox or CBS or CNN, they showed a picture in the corner of the screen of the spewing oil. And everybody's like, they've got to stop it. They've got to stop it. Once they stopped it, it's over. Nobody cares about this. Nobody cares. Royal Dutch Shell wrote their regulations for this. They wrote their lease. It's cheaper for them to go ahead and do the deal, and then if they get sued, they have some insurance. Yeah, painful. I know, it gives shivers to some of my studio audience here. Here's a part of the problem with the structural regulatory defect. Quotes, FTC attorney, that's Federal Trade Commission attorney, to join Microsoft, by Thomas Gatan, out of the Wall Street Journal, March 1st, 2012. Quotes, a senior Federal Trade Commission attorney who led several of the agency's antitrust investigations into Google Inc. has been hired by the company's arch rival, Microsoft Corp. Randall Long, a deputy assistant director in the agency's Bureau of Competition, will become a director of regulatory affairs in Washington, D.C. at the end of March, Microsoft said Wednesday. In recent years, Microsoft has emerged as Google's chief legal antagonist, working publicly and privately to get antitrust cops in Washington and Brussels interested in Google's activities. And I'm fine with that, by the way. As part of his new job, Mr. Long will likely continue those efforts before the FTC and other agencies, a person familiar with the matter said, as well as obviously being able to call the mobile phone number of other FTC members that he knows personally. Mr. Long's recruitment is the latest such hire by a tech company as tit-for-tat antitrust allegations become a growing part of the company's struggle for an edge. In 2008, Intel Corp snapped up FTC's former chief of staff as the agency was conducting an antitrust investigation of the chip giant. Microsoft said it was delighted with Mr. Long's hire. Really? His deep legal experience will provide important perspective on a broad range of regulatory matters that affect both consumers and the broader technology industry. Fred Humphreys, Vice President of U.S. Government Affairs at Microsoft, said in a statement, "There's so many things wrong with this, I do not know where to start." And I have to ask, are any of the regulators responsible for approval of the Arctic drilling going to take jobs with the companies that they just approved? That's the defect. This guy Long, he worked at the FTC. He's going to write the rules and hand them to his buddies. And wink, wink, nod, nod, tell them, what are you going to do after you leave the FTC? We could sure use some more attorneys here at Microsoft. Here's the regulations we want to use. It's not brain surgery. Not at all. Same thing happens at the FDA. Same thing happens at the EPA. Same thing happens at minerals and mining. It happens everywhere. That's the defect. You can never take a job with somebody you regulated. Never. Has to be the word never. Not 2 years, not 4 years, not never. Citizen politicians, citizen regulators. That's the only way we can protect our commons. And our commons is anything that our government controls. Leases, drugs put into the system, the ability of Google to kick out competitors. All right. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal that should certainly instill confidence in those of us privacy advocates. Web firms to adopt no track button. I believe them. I promise you, if approved and agreed to by Google and Facebook, they will point to this supposed limitation on tracking. And I have to ask, do you think they will still not have a record of everything you did on the internet? Do you think the NSA will allow these companies to not track everyone and everything since it costs no money to do so? Data costs nothing. Nothing. Propaganda. All right, I had been waiting a long time to talk about this story. Many of you have heard me literally rant regarding cameras, personally and on this thing. And this is from the Austin American-Statesman, July 21st, 2011. As you know, I temporarily killed cameras at 12th and Chicon in Austin. Helped to kill it. Temporarily. Because they're headed that way. Anyway, crime cameras installed at Runberg Lane and I-35 by Patrick George. Devices designed to monitor violent activities in high crime area, police say. Police on Thursday completed the installation, this is back in July, the installation of 4 cameras that will monitor crime in the area of Runberg Lane and Interstate 35, the first phase of a program that will include several cameras in downtown Austin. It's actually more than several. I think it's 20-something in downtown Austin. The 4 cameras are along the west frontage road of IH-35 and Runberg Lane and at the intersection of Middle Fiskville Road and Runberg Lane. They will relay images back to the city's new real-time crime center, which is scheduled to open inside police headquarters in the next few weeks. The cameras will begin operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on August 1st, Officer Michael Schultes said. Schultes said he has worked in the Runberg Lane area for several years and said it has long been plagued by violent crimes, prostitution, and the open sale of drugs. I want you to remember this statement when I read the article from KXAN and Downtown Cameras. Quotes, Schultes said he recognized that some people might have concern about being monitored by police, but he said officers will use the cameras only to respond more quickly to violent crimes. These cameras are designed to keep people safe, he said. We're not looking for minor offenses. Schultes said that when the staff at the real-time crime center sees offenses occur, they'll be able to deploy officers much more quickly with more accurate information than they might get from a 911 call. We're going to know exactly what officers need to know, Schultes said. The City Council approved about 30 cameras for the downtown area, which Schultes said will be installed by December, and they were. The cameras are funded in part by $250,000 from the Downtown Austin Alliance and a $350,000 federal grant. Okay. There was a story on KXAN regarding the downtown cameras in Austin, Texas in early March, and that's on KXAN, and you could do APD expanding Halo camera program. It'll be in, the link is in this, but you know how I don't send these out until the next rant, so I'll read it to you. Cameras help fight crime in real time. Police hoping to expand program to more locations, February 22nd, 2012 by Shannon Wolfson. The Austin Police Department's eyes in the sky are paying dividends in the form of faster response times and sharper intelligence, and now it's likely that more of them will be popping up at strategic locations downtown. What we're trying to do is more of an intelligence-led policing type, said Senior Police Officer Michael Schultes. Same guy. We'll know a better description of the suspects, suspect vehicles, direction of travel, that kind of thing. Halo program paying off, police say. The department's crime camera program, officially called HALO for High Activity Location Observation, was launched in July with 4 in the area around the Runberg Lane area. Then 27 were added in the downtown Bar District, clustered around 6th Street. The cameras have captured several crimes in progress, including drug deals, foot chases, assaults, and a homicide near the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless. They can zoom in close enough to clearly show the details of a person's tattoo. Actually, they can zoom in and see the inside of your nose. And they show it in that video, a KXAN video. They show the zoom in. Most of the activity is around the arch during the daytime, said Senior Police Officer Lori Noriega, who monitors the cameras in the real-time crime center during the day shift. Noriega serves as the eyes for patrol officers on the ground and often guides her counterparts on the ground directly to suspects who've been captured committing a crime on camera. I don't think it changes anything that they do or how they act, said Noriega. I think they just do what they do and not even think about it. Okay. I don't think it changes anything that they do or how they act, said Noriega. I think they just do what they do and not even think about it. 4 new cameras have been proposed for the Warehouse District in downtown Austin, will likely be placed on Congress Avenue between 4th and 5th Streets. 2 additional new cameras are also proposed for the Runberg Lane area. Officers in the real-time camera center at APD headquarters already monitor 4 cameras on Runberg and said they have seen a decrease in crime and loitering in that area since the cameras went up in July. Okay, that's interesting. Officers have also monitored 27 cameras in the downtown area since November. The cameras have captured several crimes in progress, including drug deals, foot chases, assaults, and a homicide near the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless. APD has not seen a decrease in violent crime downtown since the cameras went up, but they said it is too early to expect a drop in crime. In December, violent crime downtown was up more than 26% from the same time a year before. Property crime downtown increased by 11%. Ultimately, the police department hopes the cameras not only catch crime, but also help deter it. Signs that will clearly state that video surveillance is being conducted have been ordered and will be installed in the next 2 months. Police said detectives are beginning to request video from the Halo cameras as evidence for crimes they are investigating. Okay. That is something I cannot deny, that there will be additional evidence of crimes that have occurred. In November and December combined, detectives asked for the video in 19 separate instances. They requested video the same amount of times in January alone. The more intelligence we have, the better we can protect the community. That's an oxymoron. The more intelligence we have, since they don't have any, the better we can protect the community, said Schultes. See you, Randy. As a part of the story, it stated that violent crimes had increased during the time of the cameras. I did not understand the story. I really didn't. Because she's reporting and she's saying, well, we've been able to catch some people in some of the crimes, but violent crimes are up. We do know they want more cameras. Structural regulatory defect. Camera companies are trying to sell us more cameras. They are trying to sell the Justice Department more cameras. The Justice Department handed down money to the city of Austin for cameras. Oh, it doesn't cost us anything. It costs us the ultimate loss of civil liberties. Now, there's a video on that page that shows the zooming capabilities of these cameras. And I believe since they don't prevent any more crimes, then the push has to come from the investigators who want more evidence. Privacy concerns be damned. Now, I've gone off before on these cameras. And my simple questions that I asked to Commander Gay have ever been answered. Who is watching the images? Now they tell us it's the APD. How long are they kept? Who are they shared with? They go to the Fusion Center, NSA, facial recognition? What are the limits and sweep of the cameras? Why do the cameras get installed when evidence points to the fact that they do not deter crime? And according to the COPS manual that the City of Austin handed to us, it states that the only thing that cameras do is make people feel safer. And I've added to that, they make people feel safer in areas where they should not feel safer. They do the exact opposite. You see cameras and you feel safer. You're at Runberg and 35. You better watch out. Now, it's obviously investigators are saying it. They want cameras everywhere. They would catch every crime, every getaway car, everywhere. When you see the zoom-in capabilities on this video, you're going to realize that that camera happened to be pointing down at the street. But what if it's pointed up into the windows? Where are the images going? Who is looking at them? Where are the innocent images going? When we originally talked about 12th and Chicon, they said they had special software to detect crime. Huh. Maybe it detects a gun. But what it probably does is look for repeat faces that walk past the camera. Kids going to the bus stop. Legitimate people who live around there. And then they go into the database. This person was seen at 12th and Chicon. None of these questions have been answered, ever. There was a blurb in the Wall Street Journal with a quote from Sean Henry, retiring to go to a security firm, by the way. He was the executive assistant director of the FBI. You never get ahead, never become secure, and never have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Never. Now, he was talking about hackers, but I've extrapolated it to images, cameras, videos. So we have a top FBI official saying that anything can be hacked, from your Angry Birds score to the images taken by APD of young girls showering in their bathrooms on the 3rd floor of downtown buildings. It's not paranoia when it's real. And this guy proves the structural regulatory defect problem. He is going to work for a security company that benefited from the government's increased surveillance plans. He knows what they want. He knows how to design the camera systems to sell to the government. He will lobby them. He will lobby our police chief. Ask this question. Did knowing he was going to take this job affect how he did his FBI job? How could it not? He's just a person. He's a human. I mean, I'm not faulting him for that. He should not be allowed to go to work for that company. That's the defect. Simple. Not brain surgery. Totally separate. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal dated February 1st, 2012. Obama seeks refinancing aid to lift housing, by Nick Tamaris and Laura Meckler. The plan aims to help borrowers who are current on their mortgages refinance into federally insured loans. Borrowers would qualify even if they owe more than their homes are worth, or if they have trouble securing a new mortgage from a private lender. Key electoral battlegrounds, including Florida, Nevada, Arizona, and Ohio, are home to many of the weakest property markets. This is obviously political and will push off the time when we have a healthy real estate market. Extend and pretend needs to be over. Foreclose on everything now. If it forces banks to fail, let the banks fail now. We are no longer looking at the abyss. The abyss is long gone. Let the failures happen. They won't, because it's a political season. But a bit of good news from the Wall Street Journal, February 29, 2012. Home prices hit new depths, by Nick Tamaris. Although most readers of the journal idiotically do not take it that way, because they're all worried about their own houses, which obviously. Quotes, home prices fell to fresh lows in December, but economists say that a drop in the number of homes listed for sale could help stabilize prices in parts of the country this year. Tuesday's report is the latest evidence that the housing market still faces a cloudy outlook after a 6-year downturn. The inventory of homes for sale has contracted, reducing competition among sellers, according to the Wall Street Journal's quarterly survey of housing market conditions in 28 metro areas. But a large potential backload of foreclosed properties hangs over many markets, and to be foreclosed properties. Even when prices stop falling, they aren't likely to rise for years, leaving millions of homeowners stuck in properties worth less than they owe. Stan Humphreys, chief economist at real estate website Zillow, predicts another 3.7% decline in home prices for the coming year and said home prices will then bounce along a bottom for 2 or 4 years. Do you know why he is right? Because 1, extend and pretend, and 2, poor decision making when the homes were purchased. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine has a roommate, and he wanted to move out of the room he was renting and buy a condo that was $28,000 on East Riverside. And all I did was kind of ask him a couple of questions about him. You know, it's like a 40-year-old complex. What do the documents say regarding reconstruction of the whole thing, rehab of the whole thing, community living, community decision making? What's the additional cost of maintenance and upkeep? What are the potential special assessments? You know, those are some things that are specific to condo deals, but the same questions would be asked about a house deal. You know, when are you going to have to replace the roof? You know, your payment is not just going to be $560 a month, whereas you were paying, you know, $500 in rent. It's going to be $560 a month plus whatever the amortized stream of the future capital improvements you have to do. He ended up not buying, obviously. Although the downside of a $28,000 investment is not that much, not that bad. But he hadn't asked any of those questions to himself. He didn't know. You know why? He's told to buy. That's the only way to wealth. Renting does not create wealth. Which I counter with, renting does create wealth. Gives you the flexibility to move. Gives you the ability to move out of a piece of crap. Do the analysis before you buy a home. Are you going to keep that job? Are you ever going to need to move? Can you rent it for sure? Pay more money for better located properties so that you can rent or sell it if you need to, which most people do need to move every few years. Remember telling everybody in Detroit, what are you doing up in Detroit? Why don't you move down to Dallas and take a job in Arlington's GM plant? Well, I've got this house and my family's here. No one is entitled to the status quo. No one. All right, let me give you a pure political ploy and headline just for grins from the Dallas Morning News, February 23rd, 2012. Obama pitches tax cuts for corporations. It's a no-brainer, a non-loser. If it passes, he gets credit, and Democrats like him, as well as him having fodder that he actually reduced the top corporate tax rate. If it doesn't pass, he can claim he tried to do what the Republicans always say they want to do. A no-brainer, non-loser. It's pretty cool to see those when they happen. From the Wall Street Journal, March 3rd, 2012, Texas rice farmers lose their water. It's raining right now, by the way, by Nathan Koppel. In fact, we've had a gigantic spring since February 29th, I believe. The state's persistent drought has claimed its latest victims, rice farmers. Because of low water levels in several lakes that serve as reservoirs here, officials said Friday they wouldn't release irrigation water to farmers in 3 counties downstream that produce much of the rice in the state. The rice industry contributes $394 million annually to the economy of the state, which produces about 5% of the nation's rice. So we care more about watering our lawns than we do about having a food supply. That is the problem with keeping the cost of a commons artificially low and giving benefits to those who donate more to political campaigns. And there may be a time that we wanted that food. But as it is now, developers give a lot of money to be allowed to keep their lawns green. The structural regulatory defect. It appears everywhere. And Citizens United is one of the main culprits. The current Supreme Court, put in there by Republicans, has created this crony capitalist state that we live in. That's what it is. There's not a single thing that does not get touched by crony capitalism. Please show me something. Show me something where lobbying doesn't affect who gets the deal. Show me something that's completely devoid of regulation, that's free of this ability to donate money to political campaigns or give jobs to regulators or city officials or county officials. Show me. That's all there is today. I want to thank our sponsors, all of which support this form of conversation, but not necessarily the content. PianoByAngelo.com, Angelo Limbesi's, who teaches and plays keyboards all over Austin. ZetaDesign.com for all of your decorative painting needs. She can make anything look like anything. AustinAreaPlumbing.com for all of your Austin plumbing problems. TicoAdventureLodge.com, a small hotel in Samara, Costa Rica. CNC Surf School in Samara, www.cncsurfsamara.webs.com. La Vela Latina, great sunset bar and restaurant in Samara. And I understand they just opened a Mexican restaurant, and I don't know the name of it, but I will be eating there soon. Ambar Tequila at www.santosspirits.com, an extremely smooth tequila. Another cool 4-unit green hotel in Samara called The Logan at www.thelogansamara.com/Logan_home. And of course, the Delicate Genius in Houston, who is a platinum sponsor. Thanks for coming out.